So, welcome back to the That's My Dad podcast. You may hear me refer to it as the That's My Dad program sometimes, because it really is a program, and it's a project. It's not a program, but it's a podcast. So we've already gotten complicated.
Yeah.
But in the studio today, I have Nathan Gallman and Colin Edwards, the producers of the show, and we thought that today we're a couple of months in, and we've been just overwhelmed with the response.
Yeah, absolutely.
From my perspective, I'm getting calls from young men who are fathers or soon to be fathers, and they're telling me how much this means to them and how much they've are learning. And that, to me, that's where my heart is, so that those guys are learning. But the numbers have been just off the charts.
Yeah.
More than we didn't really know what to expect when we started doing a podcast, but across all these platforms, I think I told my some friends of mine in Sunday school that I knew we would have 13 viewers because there were 11 people in Sunday school plus my mom and dad. and so when we look at these analytics and it's in the thousands of listeners and viewers, wow, that just God's blessed.
Yeah,
So
very humbling.
yeah, it's
Amazing.
very humbling. So we thought that today we would kind of explain how this thing started and what our heart really is with the podcast and with the That's My Dad project. So I'm going to give a little brief background. I was the founder of Eagle Rock Boys Ranch back in 1994, and that's well documented somewhere else. So we won't go into details. But I retired, I think it was 2019, and began thinking, it'd be a shame for all those years of making mistakes to be wasted. Yeah. So I wrote a book. I actually wrote 2.5 books. I'm still working on the other half of the third one. And the book's called Raising My Brother's Child, which is a book about my experiences through all the years of working with kids who I did not bring into the world. Yeah. And it's a book to try to help foster parents, adoptive parents, and basically anybody who's ever raised a child that they didn't bring into the world. But it's also, I've been told, some of the peer reviews have said that the book is just going to be good for general parenting and behavior management. So I wrote that book, but I had no idea what to do with it. And sat down with my daughter, Allie, and she's always been much smarter than me. And I said, Allie, what should I do with this book? And she says, well, you need to talk to Colin. And you and Colin Edwards here, and my daughter were high school classmates and grew up together. So I knew Colin. He's just a little fella. And
way back when.
But Colin had written a book about his dad. And I sent him a text and said, hey, can I come and just kind of pick your brain? Because I've written the book. I think it's good, but I have no idea what to do with it. So I went down to meet with you, Colin. Yep. And I'll let you kind of
there. When I got that text, I was kind of in a, I don't know, what some would call maybe like a gap season. So for the past 5 years, I've been on staff at a church in Sylacauga, and during that 5 years, I've had some opportunities to do some photos, some video work, some marketing stuff on the side, but I had stepped away from one of those side things, and so I was kind of in a season of like, what's next for me? I knew the church was going to be a big part, but I just didn't know. There was more in my heart. I didn't know what was coming. So for about 10 months, I constantly asked myself that question, what's next? So when you texted me, I was just really excited about it, just to, even if it was only a short-term thing, just to come alongside you in this book process or whatever it looked like. And so I was excited just to sit down. We met at Good Old Boys barbecue place in Sylacauga. Yeah. That's a pretty good place.
It's not bad.
Yeah, so we met there, and so when we sat down, we spent a little bit of time catching up because, we hadn't seen each other. How long had it been? 6 years, 7 years?
Something like that.
A long time. And so we caught up for a little while, and then, we kind of got into everything, and he shared with me that he had written a book, written 2.5 books, and that he had some dreams and some vision and some ideas also for some Eagle Rock, some things to do with Eagle Rock, and some ideas and things that were coming downstream there. So he had just this big conglomeration. And by conglomeration, I mean a stack of papers about this thick, just full of dreams, full of ideas. And so he just said, I have this book, I have this, I don't know what to do with all this. And so I remember the conversation took a turn when I realized, in my limited experience of 5 years, I can sit down and teach you what I've learned, or I can try and teach you about this ever-changing landscape of marketing and social media and all of that. Or I can just, come alongside you in this and, be a part of the process, be a part of the journey with you. And so I don't know if you were expecting that or not.
No, I wasn't expecting any of that.
Yeah.
But I was in a season of my life too where I didn't know what God wanted to do with me. I thought, well, if you're done with me, I'll go out, I'll go out and graze in the pasture.
Go be a truck driver like you had mentioned.
That was my dream, was to be a truck driver. And I just felt like God was saying, no, I got some, a couple more little things before I'm done with you. And so, no, I didn't have a clue what we were doing.
So I made that comment. I was like, I can either try and teach you what I've learned, or, I can just come alongside you in this process. And I could tell he was kind of taken aback by it. So we'd already been at the restaurant an hour and a half at this point. That's how long it took to get through all the dreams and ideas and vision. And so we took a restroom break, and then I came back, and he had 3 more stacks of papers sitting on the table. He had gone to his car while I went to use the bathroom. And he said, if we're going to talk about doing this together, I may as well just go ahead and tell you all of it.
And
so we spent.
I loaded on you.
Yeah, you did. You just poured it out. And so for the next hour, another hour and a half, we were there 3 hours total. He just started unloading just ideas for Eagle Rock, ideas for what at the time he called the Fatherhood Project, where, he had the Lord had put in his heart to continue kind of what started Eagle Rock and continue to help the young kids who were raised with no father, or a father who wasn't the father he was supposed to be. And so he even mentioned kind of the podcast, he said the way that he sees that would be the best way to carry this information forward to reach the most people would be a podcast. So we talked a little bit. I don't know if we quite envisioned this at the time.
No, actually, I didn't. I had heard the word podcast, and I heard it was something
just sounded
good,
like a good idea.
Sure.
And so we talked through all of that. I think we kind of just left that meeting sensing that, the Lord was lining something up. I don't think we quite knew the magnitude of it, but we left that meeting. We're about to leave that meeting and just agreed to pray, and we'll talk here in a week or two, and just kind of see what's developed. And right before I left, I actually brought Nathan into the conversation because Nathan was in a unique season at the time too. And what's really wild about all the timing of this is that just 2 or 3 weeks prior, he and I had started talking about how, he's in a unique season, I'm in a unique season. We both have a decent, pretty good amount of experience with photo, video, with marketing. Like, we would love to be a part of something that we're passionate about. Yeah. And so I brought that into the conversation with Scott before we left. And like I said, we just agreed to pray and see where it goes. But I got in the car, and I called Nathan immediately. I was like, bro, you'll never believe what just happened. I just sat down with Scott Hilton. He has so many ideas, so much vision. The Lord's put a lot in his heart, and I think it's something that the Lord may be allowing us to be a part of. So I'm sure you remember the phone call.
Oh my gosh, I remember the phone call like it was yesterday. Yeah, about a month prior to that, I actually felt like the Lord was just telling me to quit my job and just take some time off, just to kind of get my life on track, build some discipline, some routines, serve the church, and just pour into myself. And so I was working maintenance at a camp in Springville, which was not my passion. I had a tech background from leading multiple media and production teams at churches, and then I also studied creative at Highlands College. And so that's the space that I wanted to be in, photo, videography, like making content. And I just wasn't doing it at camp, and so
And you were driving 2.5 hours every day.
I was driving 2.5 hours every day to work, an 8-hour day. It was a lot of fun. And so I followed the Lord. I quit, and it was hard. It was like all my security and safety like going out the window. But I just trusted the Lord in that. And so, like Colin said, we started talking about doing something in the creative world, in the technology world. And he called me with, like you said, 3 stacks of paper, and we sat and went through every single one of them at a coffee shop for hours. Yeah. And the more we went through it, like the more passion we gained for it. Every single thing that we read, like we wanted to be a part of it. Yeah. And that was just the Eagle Rock stuff. And then we started talking about the Fatherhood Project, and everything that our dads mean to us, like that, it just obviously we needed to be a part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Then you came and met us back in Sylacauga at the pizza place. I don't know what was going through your mind then when we were coming back together for the second meeting.
Yeah, so what was going through my mind was, I have no idea where this is headed.
Yeah.
But I knew I had a lot. I just felt like that God wasn't completely done with me, but I didn't have the skills I needed to. I mean, y'all started talking a language that I didn't understand at all. I didn't know what Instagram.
Like the word Instagram.
None of that. Podcast I had just discovered. I knew what email was. I finally got onto email. Had never sent a friend request on Facebook. I did have a Facebook that somebody else managed, and I actually had a woman manage it for me one time. Yeah. And she would put sweet little things on there and not tell me.
It's cringy.
And people would walk up to me in restaurants and say, "Oh, that was such a sweet little phrase." And I thought, I am not a sissy. I didn't put that on there. So
That's so cute.
Anyway, I had never, in terms of marketing and technology, that was never my thing. In all those years at the ranch, I failed miserably when it came to that kind of stuff. But I began to realize that when God puts something in your heart, then He's also given us the medium to get those things out to the people they need to be out to. And so about what I knew when I went to the restaurant, to the pizza place, was these guys are sharp. And I had done reference checks and found out, what you guys are all about. I knew your personal character was great, but I didn't know about your skill level. So I checked you out, and you're – I was told these guys are the best. And so when we got to the pizza place, it's one thing to have a vision. It's another thing to have done your checks. But when we sat down, within about 15 minutes, I was totally sold on the idea that we were going to have a partnership of some kind. Because what we all had in common was that we love our dads. And that became so clear within the first 15 minutes of us talking. Colin, you've lost your dad now, but your love for him and your respect and Nathan's and mine, and also I just felt the kindred spirit, I guess is the way to say it, that we all know that what our country needs and what our society needs and what our culture needs has nothing to do with race or economics. It really all boils down to we have a whole culture of fatherless children who are misguided, and they become misguided adults who raise misguided children, and it's a cycle. Yeah. It's a cycle. So that our slogan, breaking cycles of generational fatherlessness, was just easy. Yeah. I mean, it's exactly – we didn't have to think about that. Right. So I knew within a few minutes of us sitting down together that was we had the same philosophies of life and the same passions about things. So it's kind of where we were.
Yeah, and we're not fathers yet.
Not yet.
Unless you have some news for us.
No,
All right.
Not yet.
Well, we're not in that season. I've been married 4.5 years. How long you and Madison been married?
The end of this month will be 2 years.
So coming on 2 years now. So it's interesting to be a part of this journey because we cannot speak from the fatherhood perspective, but it's almost like, and I haven't even told you this yet, Scott, it's almost like we have the honor of sitting front row to someone who's done it, on an incredible magnitude, more so than most, but also a front row seat to each guest that we have each week and just hearing the story. It's almost like the most beautiful training ground for preparing us for when that season comes. So we can't speak from the fatherhood perspective, but Nathan and I would both agree after all of our conversations together, we've known each other over 20 years, that, we hope that young people can have dads like we had, like I had, like you have, and that they can, in turn become the dads that I had and he has. Does that make sense? Right. And so that's kind of our heart. So, I don't know if this is weird to say, but I feel like being a part of this is just since my dad passed away over 5 years ago, it's almost a unique way for me to carry on his legacy in some small way.
Absolutely.
And so it's just, we're really only scratching the surface here and just getting started, but it's an honor to be a part of this.
Yeah, so it's been a great partnership, and I think older guys like me, I'm 55 at the moment, in case anybody's wondering.
Just settle it, make it clear.
We need to learn that your generation is a very talented generation. You also speak a different language. You grew up on different stuff, and where I have the background, a lot of wisdom, I've made a lot of mistakes, I've learned from those mistakes. you guys have the skill to get it out there to the people who need to hear it. Mm-hmm. When I started writing books, one of my questions was, if I'm going to write to a young father, are they really going to sit down and read anything? No. Probably not. But they'll listen to a podcast on the way to work. Yeah. And several guys have called me and said, hey, they're watching it on YouTube and that kind of stuff. But so there's a blending of your guys and your creativity, your technical knowledge, and my background, my experience. Yeah. It's really blended well. So what happens here in the podcast is I sit in front of the cameras and you guys sit behind them. You manage you guys come in and the studio, as we call it. Yeah. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, talk about it.
Absolutely.
So that's really interesting. We're actually in a 12 by 24 shed.
Yeah, it's a real small, not much room. I can almost touch the wall right there.
It's been really interesting because people now are dropping by my house. It's in my backyard, and people are dropping by on a regular basis. Hey man, let me go see that studio, and it's like that's it. It's in the shed. So we talked. We were joking about how many great companies started in a shed.
Yeah,
or
that's right.
Yeah, so we're in a shed.
Yeah.
But these guys come in and set everything up, and then we bring the guest in, and that's been something that has just blown me away. And I think that I just believe God is in this because I was worried about getting people to come in to interview. And I wanted to get the right people with the right stories so that they could help the right kids. And every time we do an interview, I have in the back of my mind, there's this young man who's a father, and he's sitting there watching or listening. And everything I ask is a question I think he would want to ask, something he would want to learn from. So what's been really fascinating to me is a lot of the guys we've interviewed I haven't known. Some of them have been good friends.
Sure.
But I haven't known their stories. And from day one, from the very first interview, there's been just something almost supernatural that happens. And then, we've had a lot of guys break down right here and cry, grown men, because the stories of their lives are so powerful. And so I feel like God is giving us those stories because there are people out there who need to hear them. There are people who can benefit from them.
Do you have something that stands out most to you so far in this journey? We're at the time of this recording, we're like 7 or 8 episodes in. We're not sure when we're going to post this one yet, but so far, what stands out to you?
Well, just the power of fatherhood. Yeah. Grown men, everybody we've interviewed has been at least in their 40s or 50s. And you think of these guys, some of them are, real men's men, tough guys. But their relationships with their dads is powerful. And the ones we've had who did not have a dad, that is such a powerful thing in their life. That's been something that struck me. Another thing that struck me is that the guys we've interviewed who really had a close relationship with their dad, they tend to be more risk-taking, less afraid of failure, more willing to go out there and do things to change the world. The emotion of it all has been, we've all, I think, left this room in tears several times. And sometimes we'll interview for an hour and you guys have to edit it down to 20 to 25 minutes, which is a lot of work.
Quite the task. Because there's so much good stuff in there. Right?
There's so much that we've edited out that I wish people could hear, but you just can't expect people to take an hour out of their day. Right. But we've got all that raw footage, but some of the stories that I've heard have just been, I'm like, wow. And then after the interview, I find out they'll say, it's the first time I've ever told anybody.
Yeah, that's wild. Wow.
So men are, fatherhood, these grown men know how important their fathers were or were not in their life, and that's a powerful and emotional thing. That's been what struck me so much.
Yeah, you shared with us on multiple occasions, even this morning before we started filming, about hearing from people, whether it be people that would call Eagle Rock home in their past or in their journey, parents who were impacted by it. Is there a couple stories in there that you've heard from people how it resonated with them that just kind of reminded you that, we're helping people. This is worth it.
Yeah, like I got a call from a young man who I'd worked with, and I won't say where, but he had been in some trouble, and he just gotten out of jail, and he had a strained relationship with his dad, and he called me, and I hadn't talked to him in 4 or 5 years, and he said, "Man, I watched your podcast. That really meant a lot to me." I've had guys my age that I grew up with, went to high school, would say, "Hey, I could really relate to that." The couple of them that really struck me, I guess, was Mike Wilcutt, who was one of our early interviews. Mike's a guy I'd known for years, and he sat here and he is, I saw his lip quivering when he was talking about his dad, and Mike's older than I am, but you never outgrow the influence of your dad.
Right.
And then Taylor Gallman, when I heard him say his dad had not told him he loved him until he turned 18, I thought, wow, how many kids do I have out there who can relate to that? And they have. So they're calling me. And they're saying, "Hey, I watched this podcast. I enjoyed this story." And that's what really gets me going. And then like David Williams was here, and David told the story of the day he found out he was going to be a father. And man, I just respect David so much, because he went about it the wrong way. He admitted it, but he said, "I stepped up to the plate." And I thought, David, man, that's a message that it so needs to be taught in our culture, that it's okay if you go about it the wrong way, but you got to step up to the plate and be a man. Yeah. So there's just been moment after moment after moment, and we've edited a lot of them out. I wish everybody could see all the raw footage.
We're keeping it. We may find a way to use some of it.
Some powerful stuff.
Yeah. What I wanted to ask you too. What was it like being in here for your dad's interview?
Oh my gosh!
If you haven't watched that one, if you're watching this after
stop
this is
it,
over,
go watch
no,
it.
don't stop.
Okay,
Finish it and then go watch Taylor's. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I knew my dad's story. He's told me many times, and it seems that every time I hear it, I hear something new and something that I wasn't expecting. But I mean, my dad is my hero, truly, and to know that he had to walk through so many difficult things to become such an amazing dad that he is now is just mind-blowing to me. I mean, I sat right over there behind the camera and just bawled my eyes out when he was telling his story. The more podcasts that we do, the more I realize how great of a dad I had. He never failed to give us time. He never failed to go out of his way to make sure that we had everything that we need. Even like just this desk, like we built this desk together, even though like he's a fairly busy man, but he took the time to do that with me for this podcast. My dad means absolutely everything to me. And so that's honestly that's why I'm a part of this project. Yeah. If I can honor my dad in any way, I want to do it. And this project is a perfect way that I think can honor everything that he stands for.
Yeah. So I've heard from some of the dads actually who are still living, and I've gotten some emails. It means so much to them to have their sons go public, basically. Yeah. You know what? You're asking things we've learned. Men, we have a hard time telling our dads we love them face to face. But in this setting, I won't call the names, but I know some daddies who have gotten emotional to see their son on YouTube or any of the platforms say, "Hey, Dad, I appreciate you. I love you." And it shows you that one of the things that men crave is the respect and appreciation of their children.
Absolutely.
And we've seen that happen. And I think it's been good to allow the guys to acknowledge their own dads here. Yeah. And then when we bring in the children, oh, my goodness.
I think about Arthur Crumpler.
Arthur Crumpler, who is just an incredible person who grew up without a dad at all, didn't even know him, and became such a successful, not only professionally successful, but in so many ways. And for his daughter, after he lost his wife and and his mother for his daughter to tell him she appreciates him. And I really almost felt guilty because we had Arthur in tears and had the cameras running, but it just meant so much to him, and not just him, but all of them.
Yeah.
And the kids, the kids that we're interviewing to do those little videos at the end are enjoying it.
Yeah.
It's a platform where, one of the things that we wanted to do from the very beginning is to restore honor to the role of the father, because our culture has downplayed it. And so a lot of people in our culture say, we don't need fathers. They're just good for their sperm donators, and we can do without them after that. But what we're finding out here, and we're showing the world through the World Wide Web, do we still call it that?
We don't. It's whatever. Internet.
Well, back when they invented it, when I was a teenager, I was an adult.
Yeah, there you go.
We're sharing this with, I think some of the analytics told me we're 5 or 6 countries and several, maybe 20 states where this is being reviewed. And we're sharing with the world that the role of the father is to be honored.
Yeah.
And one of the things we're able to do here is to honor fathers. So that's something that stuck out with me. Yeah. And kind of moving forward, one of the things that we have known from the beginning is that we're going to do a documentary. And that documentary we want to make available to prisons, to church groups, to Bible classes at school, to 12th grader boys at school. And it's a documentary where we show you what it takes to be a father. Yeah. Because we think we can change the world. I told y'all in an email. I think it was after I saw the first draft of the video, the interview with David Williams, I emailed you. And I said, we've been talking about changing the world, but I really feel like we can. Yeah. I mean, and I really do, because God doesn't care how little peon we are. He can take our efforts. Yeah. And I think we could change the world. And if you can convince the world that dads are important and that role is to be held in honor, then I think we could change the world. And I know that sounds crazy, but I really think it could happen. So we're going to do that documentary at the end of this. We're going to do 50 interviews and then the documentary.
Yeah, that's exciting. Alongside the 50 interviews, one thing we've just started to a couple of weeks back was on the days that we come here and film and Scott brings his guest on, Scott and I just sit across the table, and I've had the privilege of already reading two of his 2.5 books. And so I've actually read one of them almost twice now, and they're just filled with so many stories. When did you start your counseling? 32 years ago? Is that the number?
Yeah, I did it for 32 years.
32. You did it for 32 years. And so you don't do that for 32 years and work with kids who are, raised in tough situations and not have some stories to tell. So alongside the interviews, we started pushing out 3 times a week on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, just like whether it be a 60-second story, 5-minute story. We started pushing those out. And I was actually sitting at a restaurant. I haven't told you this yet, but I was sitting at a restaurant a couple of weeks ago showing some people I was eating with just like 6 or 7 of these videos, and they were just so moved by them. Some of them are, lessons learned. Some of them are the kid that didn't have a chance who turned his life around and ended up, becoming the dad he never had. Some of them are just feel-good stories like Scooter Putin. I think that one's coming out. Yeah. Just feel-good stories that Scott shares. So he and I sit here for an hour every time we film, and I just feel like me and you, bro, are like just so blessed to be just be in the room.
Absolutely.
Just hearing this stuff and to have a front row seat to something so special. So all that's coming out. So before I throw it back to you to end this thing, we are the week we release this episode, we're going to do something a little bit different. Like you said, there's some clips that haven't been pushed out yet, and as of to this point, when we push out an interview, we only push out the whole interview. So what we're going to do this week, the week we release this actual podcast of us 3 sharing our journey together, is we're going to share our favorite moment from every episode as a short clip and just kind of revisit that. And so I think that's going to be real special. Yeah. I think back to, the 7 or 8 we've done, and it's going to be real difficult to pick, what our favorite moment is, but all those moments are just so powerful. So we're looking forward to having that be a part of this project as well.
Yeah. And then we're going to have all this raw footage.
What are we going to do with that? I guess that'll be helpful for the documentary.
Yeah,
a lot of files.
I know we got some wives and some children who are wanting to see the rest of the story.
Absolutely.
What didn't make it out.
I think we'll be at 10 or 15 terabytes by the time this thing is said and done. You probably don't know what a terabyte is.
I saw one at the zoo one time.
That'd be a lot of floppy disks.
That's a lot of floppy disks.
I thought that was a turtle.
There you go.
So our approach is to inspire.
Yep.
And people may ask, well, how do you decide who's going to come in? So, a lot of the people, I didn't know why we brought them in, but God knew, and they had stories that I didn't know that God knew somebody needed to hear. Yeah. But we could give a lot of instruction. You can go find a book on parenting. You can find all kind of instructions about discipline and raising kids and so forth. But until young men are inspired, then they don't get it. My cousin was here yesterday, and I was telling you he's works with a college basketball team, and he was telling me so many of the athletes don't have the same perception of fatherhood, and we forget that we're painting a picture for a lot of the people who are listening of, wow, I didn't know it could be that way. We're going to do a couple of interviews where we bring father and son in here just so we can demonstrate how an adult father and an adult son interact, because we forget that a lot of the world doesn't know how that works. So a lot of what we're doing is modeling here. We're setting examples, and we're trying to inspire. If we've said from the beginning, 80% inspiration, 15%.
85 and 15.
Yeah, that's what.
That math's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Got you, man.
So I can't even add it. But 85% inspiration and 15%. And we tell these, I call them chicken soup stories. Y'all didn't know what chicken soup was, but it's just little fun stories. Yeah. And I'm finding that the ladies are loving the stories, the podcast. And I think a lot of times maybe they're asking their husband to come and, hey, check this out, because they want their husbands to be inspired, and a lot of times they already are.
Absolutely.
So we're going to do those 50, and then we'll see where it goes from there. Yeah. That's still to be determined.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Kind of just playing it a month at a time. At some point in the next year, we're hoping to get at least the first book released. Yeah. I keep mentioning it here, and it's in process, but it's a long process. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it is.
I know you wouldn't say that about your own book, but I'll say it on your behalf.
Absolutely.
It's incredible.
I think, I've gotten a lot of positive feedback, and I've gotten a lot of peer reviews. So I'm looking forward to releasing that, and we'll just see where God leads. I started out when I retired, I was just going to take it easy. Unfortunately, I'm financially able to do that, and I thought, well, I might go drive a truck. And but now, I met with my family last week, and with the way this thing is going, who knows what the future has. If God can use me a little bit, then I think, He can use anybody. Yeah. And we'll just see what He wants to do with us.
It's going to be a blast, man.
When I retired from the ranch, first of all, my mission was that every kid could have a dad like I had. And when I retired, I thought, there's another way that I could help accomplish that mission. And if we can, through this podcast and through this That's My Dad project, if more kids can have dads like we had, then we've done something great.
Absolutely.
So that'll conclude this episode. We'll be back next week with some cool stuff.
Thanks for letting us be here, man.
Yeah, thank you.